Beautiful day here in Ann Arbor. It was. Lovely walk. Good day to watch a race.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can hear you. I can see you. Are you ready to go, son?
I am ready to go.
Hello. Welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One. Just watched Austin, the U.S. Grand Prix. Possibly the largest audience ever in person to see a Formula One race. We have a content-rich episode for you. Patrick, son, can I get your thoughts on the U.S. Grand Prix in Austin, Texas?
Yeah, I mean, Austin is usually a lot of fun near the end of the season. COTA is a great circuit. Tons of fun to watch. And this time around, we got a lot of action, which was a lot of fun.
We did.
And I think, if we have to go with a 3-word take, mine is going to be all for one. We lost the owner of the Red Bull team and the co-founder of the Red Bull franchise this weekend. And obviously it was a very difficult time for that team, and actually a lot of drivers who got their start at Red Bull on the grid. I think the team kind of rallied around that, and Max, put the team on his back a little bit and drove them to a win that has capped off sort of a spectacular season for them, ultimately claiming both the Drivers' World Championship and Constructors' Championship this season.
Even though these new regulations plus spending cap means that all the teams are going to be within a much narrower gap of ability. We're not going to go back to an era like the turbo hybrid era where Mercedes is going to win everything year in, year out. There's new regulations. It makes for more competitive driving. The cost caps make for more competitive teams. But that said, I just think what Red Bull is doing is just amazing. Max is just simply outracing everyone. Red Bull have the best car. Despite the new regulations, despite the spending cap, we might be in a new era of Red Bull domination. Max won World Championship last year. He won the World Championship this year. Red Bull wins the Constructors this year. I'm not sure if Mercedes or Ferrari can catch them within 1 or 2 more seasons. We'll be sure to watch, but it's fascinating to see this level of domination despite rules meant to ensure competition. And you also mentioned the Red Bull founder. It really is astounding what he did. Just for starters, Red Bull, here in the U.S. and most of the world, Coke and Pepsi brands dominated the soft drink market. We didn't think there'd be room for something like a Red Bull. He proved us all wrong. He's gotten into a lot of sports, and just in F1, just what an outsized influence. The Red Bull team now with 5 constructors, multiple world champions, so many of the drivers got a start from him. Pierre Gasly had nice words to say. Daniel Riccardo, nice words to say. Pretty amazing. But you're right. This was a race. Max just put the team on his back. He already has the championship won. He won that in Suzuka in Japan last week. And but it was like, no, that's not enough. We're gonna get the constructors this week, which I did not think was going to happen. It happened in part because of more Ferrari heartache. Do you wish to speak to that?
Ferrari has great qualifying. We've seen it all year. Carlos Sainz and Leclerc each have multiple pole positions this year. They regularly have qualified 1 or 2, or pretty much at the worst on the second row. And so, Carlos Sainz starts on pole and Leclerc qualifies second, but obviously takes a 10-place grid penalty for his engine and power unit, or turbo, I think. But, turn 1 can be dangerous sometimes. Sainz got off to a bit of a slow start, but, only lost 1 place to Max. I think Sainz didn't really do anything wrong. Got held up getting on the power behind Max, and Russell made a pretty big blunder and went straight into the side of Sainz. I mean, not much the Ferrari driver can do in that situation. And I think we've talked about this a couple of times on the show. The rules seem to make it pretty clear that you're allowed to take out your competition and suffer very minor penalties.
5 seconds Russell for taking out.
Yeah. 5-second penalty for taking out his closest rival in the Drivers' Championship currently. Yes. Only a couple points separated those two to start this day. So pretty ridiculous, I think, that the penalty for, basically what amounts to taking out your competitor from the race. Sainz had to retire after that. Is a slap on the wrist and, go finish in the top 5. It's unreal that that's possible.
Yeah, we had this discussion, I think, a couple months ago, and I think it was George, and he took out Sergio, and we thought, that was on George. That was his fault, just like today. And we said, you either say that's George's fault and give him a significant penalty, or say it's a racing incident. Because, George, and I think we're seeing the frustration really bubble up with George Russell. I mean, he took out Sergio early this year. He took out Carlos. Those are, 2 of his rivals. He's competing for position against them. And yeah, both times, 5-second penalty. And it's pretty shocking. I'm not 100% sure I could write rules for the FIA for them to make it so that if it's not a racing incident, you are going to suffer a serious penalty. But they do need to look at that. And I did want to talk actually about George Russell, because I thought it was a bit of a foolish error on his part. He did take out Carlos Sainz, who had such a nice weekend leading up to that, and really believed he was going to fight for the win. And he's out almost as soon as the race starts. And I think we're seeing a lot of frustration from George Russell. He probably expected the Mercedes car to be better than it has, and really it's just been the 3rd best car this year. He had been out driving Lewis Hamilton, his teammate, the first half of the season, and now I think that has reversed, and he's not keeping pace with Lewis. And so I think this is sort of leading him to sort of make mistakes, to sort of take out some aggression, some frustration. But it was disappointing for Ferrari fans, for Sainz fans, and for racing fans, because we all wanted to see that. We had Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes right at the front. We really wanted to see that battle. George sort of, kind of robbed us a bit of that.
Yeah, we ended up getting a little bit of it at the end there with Leclerc coming back, and the Red Bull pit issue with Verstappen kind of putting him in the mix with Hamilton. But yeah, I mean, if from the get-go we got to see those 3 teams and some really great drivers go head-to-head without incident, I think it would have made for an even more entertaining race than we ended up getting.
Yeah. But we did get to see, like you said, we did get to see some fun, intense battles. Austin usually delivers. It did again this year. Max and Lewis, Max and Charles, the great, battle between Vettel and Magnussen there near the end. That was fun to watch. So we did get a lot of good stuff this race. And what about the like? How did Alonso even make it to the race to the end of the race? It was like, I was like, oh, I did not know F1 cars could do wheelies, but apparently they can. and how, and you could tell that one really took a lot out of him. I'm sure he's going to be seeing a doctor tonight, but that incident with Stroll, I thought, well, there's no way he'll even continue the race. I didn't think he would finish the race. And, that was a hell of a race from Alonso. Was it 6th or 7th he came in after that accident? That was impressive.
Yeah, it definitely was. Good driving from him. I think we kind of got to see both ways that F1 cars can be surprisingly fragile, with that incident between Russell and Sainz basically, destroying the radiator in Sainz's car and he has to retire, but also how surprisingly durable they can be. And Alonso was full airborne pretty much. Yep. Came down hard, still smacked into a wall, and his car was, good enough to drive the rest of the way.
Right.
And still quick enough to finish in the points. It's impressive what these machines are capable of, and then just how much the drivers have to go through on any given race. And I think it's a testament to, them actually being athletes. I don't know if people maybe think of racing drivers as athletes, but they definitely are. They put their bodies through a lot, and it can be quite impressive.
It certainly can. I also thought it was impressive. Kevin Magnussen. He was battling it out there, and he was taking on Vettel, and they put on a great show. This is for a Haas team that's now fallen down to, I think, 8th and maybe close to 9th, and really not fighting for anything. Once again, sort of saying, well, next year's car will be competing for podiums. We'll see. But he did a great job also. So why don't you give me your top 5 for Austin?
Yeah, we kind of mentioned a lot of them already, but I'll start off. I think that so many guys had good races, but the guy that impressed me the most, I think, this weekend was Charles Leclerc. He had an awesome qualifying, ended up qualifying second behind his teammate, took that 10th-place grid penalty, started way down in 12th, and just kind of methodically worked his way back up. Fought tooth and nail with Verstappen until his tires went, and ended up on the podium. I thought it was a very impressive weekend overall for a driver that, has been, pretty disappointed some weekends this season. But he came back and he's battling with Perez in the Drivers' Championship, and he leapfrogged him this weekend and goes back ahead.
I don't have Leclerc in my top 5, and I think you make some great points. And he had a great race, and he's in second in the Drivers' Championship. But the reason I didn't put him in my top 5 was, as much as I like him and as great as a driver he is, he seems to always be at his best when there's no pressure. And F1 drivers really need to be able to sort of embrace the pressure. This weekend, Carlos had pole, so the pressure was more on Carlos, his teammate. The Drivers' Championship is already won and done. Max had it. If Red Bull didn't win the Constructors this week, they probably would next week. So there just was not much pressure on Charles Leclerc. He did have a great race, great weekend. It was fun watching him today, but I'm starting to have some doubts about what he's going to be able to do when it's all on the line.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and hopefully we get to see that. I hope Ferrari is able to put out a good competitive car with the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes consistently over, the next several years.
Yep. So why don't you give me your number 2?
Yep. So number 2, I have Seb Vettel. Awesome performance from him. He went through a lot, gave us some good battles, and got ultimately some really impressive points for that Aston Martin. I think they're now chasing down Alfa Romeo in the battle for Constructors Championship, the 6th place position. They're pretty close there after sort of a tumultuous season overall, I think.
Yep.
Then I have K-Mag,
nice.
3rd driver of the day. You mentioned him earlier, but he, pulled off a 1-stop, got good points, keeps Haas afloat in that 8th spot in the Constructors, ahead of AlphaTauri. He finished ahead of both of their drivers today. So well done to him. Then I have the pilot, Fernando Alonso.
He went airborne today.
Yeah, he went through a lot today. This weekend overall, he had a really solid qualifying after pretty disappointing from his teammate Ocon. But Alonso also took a grid penalty. I think he maybe started 14th or something like that. And had a few incidents today, but managed to climb his way back up into 7th for a really impressive finish. And then finally, I have the race winner, Max Verstappen. Kind of was pretty comfortable for most of the race. And then that second pit stop really kind of threw a wrench into things, that they weren't able to get one of his wheels secured. And so it took a while in the pits, and he ended up coming out behind both Hamilton and Leclerc, I believe. And he was able to get around Leclerc fairly quickly, and then, track down Hamilton and get past him in the closing stages of the race. So really good performance from him under a bit of pressure there at the end of the race, and he came through for his team.
Nice. So you have Leclerc, Vettel, Magnussen, Alonso, and Max. That's great. Mine a bit different this week. Normally we were more in tune. You had Max at 5. I had him at 1. Just another great drive. I think he's proven that he's now the best driver on the grid once again. He could have taken this week off, and he did not. He could have decided not to fight Leclerc and not to fight Hamilton for the win, but he went for the win, even though, as we said, he has the Drivers' Championship locked up, and Red Bull was going to win the Constructors at some point during the few races remaining this season. But just another stellar performance by Max. That's why I had him number 1. My number 2, like your number 4, Alonso. Alonso, the legend. It's really, the superlatives come easy with Alonso. A storied career, 2 championships, and, a long career with lousy cars. And yet when you look back over the past, 15, 20 years, you might want to talk about Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, the Mercedes dominant era. Kimi had some nice races, but Alonso is just, if you give him a top car, he's going to win. And if you give him a bad car, he's going to somehow do something magical with that. We saw the long defense of Lewis Hamilton to get Ocon his win. This sort of crazy incident this week where, he goes airborne somehow, he sticks the landing, as they say. He gets the car moving again and gets in the points. It's just, there's going to be plenty of highlights for everyone to see once Alonso finally retires. My number 3, another legend, the retiring Sebastian Vettel. Great race for him. Love seeing some of those battles. And just an errant pit stop really screwed him because for a while there, you even thought, could he actually be on the podium? Could Vettel and the Aston Martin actually get on the podium? But sadly, that was not to be. Number 4, Lewis Hamilton. He struggled the first half of the year in this Mercedes, even losing out to his teammate George. But really in the second half of the season, he's come on. He's just being, his sort of focused, dominant self, just relentless. Another great race. I think Max is a better driver and the Red Bull's a slightly better car. He just could not hold on for the win, but a great race. He came in second. My number 5 is Lando. Lando's been sort of the quiet driver this year, but he just keeps coming into the points, even while his teammate Daniel Ricciardo keeps failing to make the points. The McLaren car should be much better than it is. It's not, and but Lando does a great job week in, week out, and I think Lewis will probably retire in a year or two, but we will have 2+ great British drivers, George and Lando. Let's hope we may add Albon to that list. So I have Max, Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, and Lando Norris. Now, there was a brief period there where it was Hamilton, Vettel, and Verstappen. And they even mentioned it. That was like 13 podiums or 13, championships among them, which is pretty amazing. And I think we actually have discussed that before where, it's like, right now there are just so many championships on the grid. You can add Alonso's 2 for 15. And, once Lewis retires, we may have just one driver with a championship, Max Verstappen. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think that was actually we talked about that after the last race because my across the line predictions had all 4 of them. I had taken all 4 of them. So 15 world championships between them. A pretty impressive drive from all of those guys actually this weekend. So
all the champions. Great. Yep. Now, I talked about Lando Norris and the McLaren. Lando's been great. His teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, not so great. The McLaren, not so great. One great thing McLaren did, though, this weekend was let Mario Andretti take one out for a spin, and that was great to see. And I was sort of shocked because, we've sort of made it our mission to sort of help bring F1 to America, and it's just growing in popularity week in, week out, year after year. It's still European-centric. And I was shocked at how many folks over in England and Europe just did not realize the outsized impact Mario Andretti has had on the sport. He's won F1 championship. He's won Indy 500. I believe he's won Daytona, Le Mans. He's built teams. This guy is one of the legends of the sport of racing. More so, you could put him in the top 5, top 10 of all time. And with guys like, Enzo Ferrari, for example. So I was just kind of surprised at that how few sort of European race fans sort of really didn't understand the impact Andretti has had in racing.
Yeah, maybe it's just due to he's had more influence in North American racing, right? But of course, he's a Formula One champion. That's an impressive thing, and he has an Indy team. He's got sons, Marco Andretti, and that have been Indy drivers and run things for that team. And he's an impressive person in motorsport. He's definitely had a lot of influence, and especially in IndyCar and other North American racing institutions. But it was awesome to see him out there driving around it. I think it was a 2013 McLaren. So cool to see. We got to see him in the booth, I think, with Danica Patrick and maybe Jenson Button during the free practice sessions, and just what a cool person he is, and has had so much impact on the sport, Formula One and motorsport in general, and has really helped bring an American influence into motorsport, which I think is so cool to see.
Right. And you mentioned Danica Patrick. When the Sky F1 team heads to the U.S., she's there. And I want to say she does a great job in color commentating. But sticking with the sort of McLaren sub-theme here, Daniel Ricciardo, once again, outside the points, even though his teammate Lando in the points. Daniel has no team signed for next year. He says he won't be a reserve driver, I think. He says he will not compete in Indy. What do you think? Is he done? Or will we see Daniel Ricciardo back in F1 as a driver?
I feel like I have to say I don't think so. His performances haven't really been there with McLaren, so it seems like it would be weird for him to sign with any other team that currently doesn't have a driver signed. It would feel like they would go in a different direction. And if he doesn't really want to be in a reserve sort of role, then, it seems like he would have to look elsewhere to other to other sort of racing leagues, I guess, for a chance to drive. I think, Indy would be a cool place for him to go. Maybe, he gets excited about Formula E or something like that. We've seen a couple guys do that before, but he's been in Formula One for so long, and, he was really, really close with Red Bull a couple seasons to winning that championship. And, he just never got it done. And yeah, it seems kind of hard to believe that he'll be out of Formula One, but I just don't see an opportunity presenting itself for him that maybe he's willing to take.
I am with you. He's such a great personality, fun guy. Everyone seems to love him. He had a couple good years with Red Bull, good year with Renault, and it's tough. We never can say never. There's rumors that even still Hulkenberg make back in. Magnussen was out, but he got the call back. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't believe Ricciardo will be back in F1 as a driver. Bit sad. So we know who finished on the podium. It was Max and Lewis. Charles, what about on the virtual podium, Patrick? Who do you think belongs on our virtual podium this week?
Yeah, well, we also already kind of mentioned mine. So I had Mario Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi slinging modern day-ish F1 cars around COTA, which was awesome to see. But, it took me back to your suggestion of a seniors tour. Call it what you want, Formula S or whatever.
Very senior.
Yeah. If you could see Andretti, Fittipaldi, and Lewis, Vettel on the same track, how cool would that be? That would be.
Yes. I think that's a great idea because when I brought up that idea, it was like, we can get Alonso in his early 40s. Lewis and Vettel will soon be in 40s. Bring Kimi back. Hey, Daniel Ricciardo, maybe he'll be part of the F1 Seniors Tour. But why leave it at that? Let's say, hey, Jenson Button, you want to get back in there? Emerson Fittipaldi, Juan Pablo, Mario Andretti. What is Mario? Is he like 80? I don't know. No. That would be awesome. Yeah, we've got to make the F1 Seniors Tour happen. Nice. For me, virtual podium, I'm going to put Austin. It looked like a nice day. The fans showed up from all around the U.S., well over 100,000 in attendance. Good racing. We had a lot of good battles, and so the U.S. is putting on a show, and so I love it. So Seniors Tour, Mario Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi, and Austin get on to our virtual podium. Okay, let's switch to the soft compound. Has America peaked for F1, or has F1 peaked in America? We had our second of 2 races in the U.S. at Austin with this week. Next year, we're going to have 3 U.S. races. There's talk of a 4th, possibly New York or California. Logan Sargent, American driver, is getting rumored to be an F1 driver next year. ESPN renewed their deal with F1 and will show most of the races live. There's going to be a new season of Netflix Drive to Survive coming out next year. Apple CEO Tim Cook was there waving the flag. Disney CEO Iger was there. Brad Pitt was there. There's going to be some new Hollywood F1 movie. So what do we think of this, Patrick? Is America and F1 as a thing kind of like Ben and, who is it? J-Lo? Ben and, what would that be?
Yeah,
Ben
yeah.
Jen? I don't even know. But
I don't think we should try.
Okay, right.
Culture.
Right. So what do we think? F1 in America.
I mean,
is this a permanent thing? Will this continue to grow, or is it just?
I think Americans love fast chaos, and that's kind of what F1 delivers most of the time. I'm not sure that all of the races get the same kind of American attention as the races that happen in the U.S., but I think it's so much more popular than it was even 5-6 years ago in the States. They're adding races every year, basically. So it's, I think it's still growing. And I don't think it's reached its peak. I think once we finally do see another American driver as a permanent driver, I think in Formula One, interest will go up even more. And there's still talks of another sort of potential buyout by American ownership of teams in F1. So, I think there's still room for the U.S. and sort of American interest to gain influence in the sport. And I still look forward to it. I think there's a very Eurocentric sort of focus on Formula One, even still. And I think as things start to shift and the U.S. gains more influence and the sport gains more popularity here, we'll start to see, just more North American interest in the sport, Canadian, Mexican, all over. So I think that's a good thing overall for the sport. And, I'm excited to see it continue to grow.
Yeah, me too. I think you're right. I think it will continue to grow. The American influence with tech money, media, social media, Hollywood, that's all going to play a part. And I think we're still in the early days of the American sort of usurpation of F1 fandom. Having said that, though, there is one American team in F1, pseudo-American team. That's Haas. Gene Haas is an American. But I hate to say bad stuff about Haas. However, we are now entering the second full season of a spending cap. They're not even spending, I think, at the floor. They keep making excuses. Next year's car. I'm sort of losing my patience with Gunther. He's makes for great TV and headlines, but we're really not seeing the results. Haas team has been in F1 now for several years, and I think it was their first and second years that were the best. They seem to have gotten worse almost every year. I don't know. Any thoughts on Haas, on Gunther Steiner, on the Haas team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little disappointed with Haas. They managed to scrape up enough money to get a team together and enter the sport. I'm not sure how they were able to do that. Because like you said, they're just being way outspent by everybody else. They kind of trundle along and somehow kind of end up getting some results on occasion, which has, helped them secure so far an 8th place constructors finish, which admittedly is impressive for the team, but you kind of think to yourself, why is 8th place impressive?
Right.
And I think that's kind of where everybody is at with that, where look, you can't be happy with 8th place.
Yeah.
You got to be competitive in the midfield at least. And so, you need Gunther and all your other, people, seniors to, find a way to get good sponsorships, to find a way to, get enough money to put together a competitive car. Because, as maybe impressive as some of Magnussen's performances or some of Mick's performances have been, they're still very close to being overtaken in that 8th place position by AlphaTauri, who's had a really horrible year.
AlphaTauri has had such a horrible year, and that's their sort of inexplicable horrible year is the only reason why Haas is not in 9th place.
Yep.
And there has been no team as consistently terrible as Williams. They are again in 10th. There really is no excuse for Williams to sort of consistently be this bad going into a second decade of just utter futility. But we are in the U.S. Haas is the lone semi-U.S. team, and I do think it's time for us to start demanding better performance. The Gunther show is sort of wearing thin. Like you said, 8th place, enough of that. It's just, like I said, really at this point, you can't be consistently terrible for a decade. You really have to, some changes need to happen. There's been a lot of folks, like Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, sort of putting extremely high demands on any new team coming into the sport. And it's justified, whether you think that's justified or not. Haas was sort of stumbled onto the final seat of the last lifeboat, getting out of the Titanic. They got in at exactly the right time, just as the sport was taking off globally. But it's time. I think there could be no more excuses. We need to see something more from them. Well, Ask the Stewards. In our Ask the Stewards segment, I want to know who is going to write the book on Red Bull F1. We talked about Red Bull, the owner and founder of Red Bull, really what they've done over the past 10 to 15 years. Hats off to Christian Horner. Seb Vettel was a 4-time champion with them. Max is already a 2-time champion with them. They've just won the Constructors' Cup for 2022. And really, I think there's sort of the opposite of Haas. I think there is no team in F1 that has more talent or more fun, that seems to get more joy from the sport while being the most focused. And, I think that is a testament to the Red Bull leadership. It's pretty amazing what they've done. I would like to see like a serious business case study of the Red Bull F1 team.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. They kind of burst onto the scene and have done a great job in not only producing really impressive vehicles throughout the years, but also with their sort of driver program, their development program. They have several drivers on the grid currently that came up through there, and have had several more that have left the sport in the last couple of years. But what they've been able to accomplish in sort of their brief history with the sport, it is really amazing. And I think Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, like you mentioned, have a lot to do with that. Their whole engineering staff and marketing staff and everyone that is associated with that team, they clearly work extremely hard to put together, championship winning cars and teams. And I don't really know what to say about it. It's been unbelievable to watch throughout the years. 6 drivers' championships, like you had mentioned, and seems like more to come.
Across the Line, that is our segment where we predict the podium for the next race. The next race will be in Mexico, North America theme. Austin this week, Mexico next week. And Across the Line, we predict who we think will be the top 5. If we get them in the top 5, we get 1 point. If we predict their exact position, we get 3 points. Patrick, what are the standings for Across the Line to date?
Well, with my 5 points to your 2 this week, I have taken a slim 73-72 lead with 3 races to go.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, that's a close one with 3 races, right? So we have Mexico, then down to South America, Brazil, and then is it Abu Dhabi to finish it?
Yep. And I think Brazil has a sprint.
Oh, a sprint. Yes. Yes. Okay, so there's a bit more points on the line there, though it does not matter much for first, but it could have an impact on second, third, fourth, and even in the constructor standings. Okay, well, for Mexico, who goes first, you or me?
I get the first pick this week.
Oh, okay.
And, Red Bull looks good. And it's the Mexico Grand Prix. We've got a home drive for Sergio Perez, so I'm going to take him P1.
Excellent. That's a good one. I will take, since you took Sergio, I will take, it's not Mexico. I know my geography, but he tragically spun out, knocked out of this race. So Spanish-speaking Carlos Sainz, I'm going to go first. Carlos Sainz. And then, keeping with my Spanish-speaking theme, the Spaniard, Fernando Alonso, in second on the podium.
Oh my goodness.
Nice.
Well, that would be rather impressive. A fun day for Carlos Sainz, and then Alonso to get on the podium would be very cool. Let's see, my 2 and 3. Oh man, he's come so close a few times this season. Hasn't gotten it done. 7-time world champion. I'll take Hamilton P2.
Ooh, nice.
And then I'm thinking I'll take Leclerc for his 6th podium in a row.
Wow, is that true? So this was his 5th in a row?
Believe so, yeah.
Excellent. Good for him. You have Sergio, Lewis, and Charles. I have Carlos Alonso. So for 3rd place, I will take Max. Max, the current world champion. And in 4th, I was talking him up earlier. I will take Lando Norris.
Nice. All right. 4 and 5. This is very interesting. I think I will go with a guy who had a great race this week. 4-time world champion Seb Vettel.
Ooh.
And then, a guy who has had a pretty crappy season, but looked good aside from a weird late move defending Alonso, took him out of the race. I'm going to take Lance Stroll, P5.
Yeah, that was a bit of a dick move by Lance Stroll and Alonso today. I think that was mostly his fault. I think he just got a little angry, didn't want Alonso to pass him. Just sort of, little got the elbows out, but it was too much. Something, it could have been serious. But overall, I think Stroll's having a decent season despite that poor car. You have Sergio, Lewis, Charles, Sebastian Vettel, and Lance Stroll. I have Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris. 4th, and in 5th, I will go with. Let's go with. We haven't heard much from him recently. Esteban Ocon with the Alpine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to me because, we've talked about Alonso a lot and how fun he is to watch. And I'm sure, in our top 5 picks, we've had him pretty consistently. But Ocon has 7 more points than Alonso this season.
He does.
He's having a very good, albeit quiet, season overall.
Yes, a quiet season, but very good, solid workmanlike season. I think Alonso's had some worse luck and reliability issues. Otherwise, I think he would be a good bit ahead of his teammate. But Esteban, once again, solid F1 driver. He's sort of like, Magnussen, for example, just in a better car. So, Mexico next week. Any crazy prediction for the race or the remainder of the season?
The only thing I can think of as a crazy prediction, and I think this actually is crazy, for the rest of the season, Max Verstappen now has 13 wins on the season, tied with Schumacher and Vettel for the most wins in a single season all time. I predict that he will not win any of the next 3 races he will not take sole leadership with more than 13 wins in a single season.
Wow. See, that is a crazy prediction because I think he almost certainly will get one more. He's admitted there's more races now, so it's an easier record for him to have than sort of like Schumacher or Vettel, for example. But I think he's going to break that. So that would be interesting. My crazy prediction, Lewis second, he's been close. George has been close, but no wins to date. I am going to say no wins at all this year for Mercedes. That is my crazy prediction. In fact, I'm going to go further than that because the Mercedes car has consistently gotten better. They have been very, very close. I just think Max is just too good. However, I still think no wins for Mercedes this year. And next year, Mercedes will not win the Constructors, but all eyes will be on them because they'll be so good that we'll think Lewis could win his 8th, but George will sabotage that because George wants to win that title, and George has shown he can hang. So, I mean, can you imagine next year Toto sending the message to Lewis to sort of defend so George can win? That would be a bit shocking.
Yeah, well, Lewis wouldn't do that. I'm pretty sure we're all aware that would not happen.
Right. No F1 driver should. That's
Toto
not just on the
can
list.
say that, but it would never happen.
Awesome. All right. I want to remind our listeners, send your questions or comments to hardcompoundpod@gmail.com. We may read them on the show. We definitely will read them. I also wish to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
Hey, good show, son. Good show. I felt a little dehydrated. Yesterday, all day was spent in the sun drinking beer at a beer festival. This morning, all morning was spent at a cider mill drinking non-pasteurized fresh apple slushies. And so we'll see how the two impact your father.
Well, that sounds like a nice weekend. So